All right, so we'll get started. Hey, thanks everybody for attending. This will be a short little presentation on labor burden versus overhead and just understanding what both of them are. In order to perform projects, time and material jobs, predict your firm's financials and run a profitable company, you need to accurately calculate both your labor burden and overhead expenses. No budget is complete without both. Your profit will suffer if you don't have a precise idea of your job expenses and the actual cost of employing your field workers and in-house staff. So this is the meeting. We will explain the difference between labor burden and overhead and how to calculate and use them in COBRA for optimum job profits. Okay, so let's get started. First, what's the difference between the two? Well, labor burden is the total cost of your field workers. Labor burden includes their pay rate, employer paid taxes, vacation, and benefits. Overhead is the total of all expenses incurred to run the business. This includes office expenses and office workers. First, we'll discuss the labor burden. Now, the labor burden consists of indirect and direct costs. What are indirect costs? Well, they're employer paid taxes and benefits, vacation costs per hour. Now, as our example, we've come up with a $24.11 per hour indirect cost for the employee, Chuck Cameron, that we're going to be using in this demonstration. And then the direct cost, that's Chuck's pay. He's getting $40 an hour, plus the non-labor rate, which is $2.50 an hour. That's for his truck charge, which is for the gasoline and insurance on an hourly basis. So the basic calculation that COBRA makes for the labor burden is the indirect costs divided by the direct costs. And in our example, that's $24.11 divided by the worker pay plus the non-labor rate, which equals $42.50, or the actual calculation that is 56.73%. That's the total labor burden for Chuck. All right, now here's how we're going to set this up in COBRA. First, a lot of this is done in Worker Center. And if you haven't built your burden table, you can do so in Worker Center. This example shows the indirect costs, which are any employer-paid costs and benefits. Now, these indirect costs can be imported from the COBRA payroll using the Import Payroll Burdens button. But if you're not using our payroll, you can go into Worker Center and you can add these to your table manually, as well using the data entry fields at the lower left of the window. We have help topics on this, or if you need assistance, let us know. But you got to get your burden table set up. Okay. And regarding this burden setup, the method is the key. And there's two methods. There's a percent burden, which means that the burden is calculated as a percentage of pay. And then there's the dollar burden, and that means that the burden is calculated as a dollar amount. Now, all this information comes from payroll, whether you're using the COBRA payroll or a payroll service or a different payroll program. You can find this information in your payroll program. And we've circled in red so you can see the normal employer tax liabilities of the FICA Medicare, the FICA Social Security, the federal unemployment tax, and the state unemployment tax. And of course, we're based in Minnesota, so we have our own separate Minnesota state unemployment tax. And payroll calculates these as percentages of pay. So they are entered with a method of a percentage with their decimal percent on the circled items there. So a little bit about the method. Okay. Now, any burdens that are calculated in payroll as hourly amounts are entered with a method of the dollar and their hourly dollar amount. And again, all this information comes from payroll. So now in Worker Center, when I have my worker Chuck Cameron set up here, we can see the total cost of the worker circled, $66.61. This total cost is derived from Chuck's pay rate, which is 40 an hour, plus the non-labor rate. Remember, we talked about that just a couple minutes ago. That's the truck charge for the insurance and the gas, plus the total burden where we did our calculation. So let's look at how we can add the burdens to a worker. So each of our workers has Chuck's true burden. In Worker Center, once you've built your burdens table, you can bring up the displayed worker, such as Chuck or someone else, and then click the Burdens tab after you've displayed the worker. All the burdens that you've built in the burdens table are in the left list. They're what we call the default burdens. Now, if you are using the COBRA payroll, you can simply click the Import Payroll Burdens button on the right side under the right list, and all of Chuck's burdens, as the example, would come in automatically for you. Otherwise, just double click on each burden that you've built one at a time from the left list to add them to the worker's burden table at the right. And we've also included an edit and delete capabilities as well. Okay. Now, as you add burdens to the worker, you will see the total burden dollar for the worker increase. Likewise, if you delete or edit a worker's burden, these changes are also reflected in the total burden dollar. Your cost dollar also reflects any changes to the worker burdens, giving you an accurate picture of what your labor is truly costing you on an hourly basis. And that's what we're after here. Now, keep in mind that if you have a worker that does different types of work, perhaps, we have some customers, they have more hazardous types of work, and then maybe some are doing government jobs where there's a ton of paperwork, it's extra. You could have a different pay rate and burdens that may be required for those types of work. With COBRA, you can set up additional worker IDs for the worker in Worker Center. So as this example shows, I have CAC, my worker ID. That's my normal Chuck Cameron rate. But then if I'm doing a government job, I could set them up again as CACG or perhaps CACH, and we would have totally different burdens and a total different cost for that type of work. Okay, excellent. So let's go on to overhead for a moment. Understanding overhead. Okay, overhead is the expenses incurred by the company to do business called operating expenses. Now, this includes office expenses such as rent, utilities, electric, etc. It also includes the expenses for office workers. Here's the standard calculation for construction companies. Overhead expenses divided by sales. So your total expenses and sales are derived from your latest end of year profit and loss statement. Now here's an example of a profit and loss statement, which is also known as an income statement. We see that our total sales, as this example, is $100,000. Our total operating expenses was $13,000. So we simply calculate our overhead percent as 13,000 divided by 100,000, and that equals 13%. So how do we use this in COBRA? Good question. Okay, again, overhead is simply another markup used on jobs. And you can automate overhead percents by the different types of jobs you do. And this makes sense because some jobs may cost you more, like we discussed. So your overhead percent would be more for those types of jobs. If we look at our example here on the job types table that you can build in COBRA, I've got all these job types of the different types of work I do, which again, those job type reports are really great because I can zero in on a specific type of job that I'm doing over the year and see how profitable I am compared to others. But in our example we're talking about today, the overhead percent, you can see for the majority of our jobs, we calculated at 13%. However, we see one at 20%, which is a government contract job. And again, there's just a lot more paperwork involved, a lot more expense to handling those types of jobs. That's why we've got a higher overhead that's kicked in whenever we do this type of work. So when you set up a new job in COBRA and you select that job type for the job, the selected job type's overhead percent is automatically assigned for you to that job. Now this overhead percent can be entered or changed in Job Center's General tab if necessary. And again, if you didn't tie it to the job type, again, you can just come right in on the job and plunk your overhead percent right in. Now, again, keep in mind, whatever markups you are using for the material and labor on the job, this overhead percent is going to kick in and be added to calculate.
My apologies, Jim. Can you unmute yourself?
Okay, I guess I got muted by something somehow. Can you hear me now?
Thanks, Jim.
Okay. Okay. I'm not sure where I got muted. I couldn't quite see. But anyway, let's go.
Just, yeah, 20 seconds. Yeah.
Okay. So again, I'll just go over this last slide here. Using overhead in COBRA, when you set up the new job in COBRA, you can select the job type for that job. The select job type's overhead percent is automatically assigned to that job for you. And this overhead percent can be entered or changed in the Job Center's General tab for any job. But the key thing when you're going to apply overhead to a job, keep in mind that the overhead percent is going to add to your calculated material and labor for a higher price. Okay, so that's a little bit about the overhead of the material. And like what I was saying earlier, I heard this recently that if you don't know what your true job costs are, you're like a ship in a storm without a rudder. So God, let's make sure we've got this down when you're using COBRA. This concludes the section on calculating labor and burden overhead. Lastly, what we want to do now is add Chuck's labor hours to a job to establish our true labor cost for the job. And to do that, we could go into our normal labor posting screen and add Chuck's hours manually, or we could send them directly from the COBRA payroll to the job cost. But we're going to try a little different approach to do this now that we've established our true cost per hour for Chuck Cameron. And we're going to let Chuck take advantage of the latest technology to enter his own job hours while he's out on the job site. Okay, and to do that, we're going to, if I can get here, we're going to bring up what we call mobile enterprise. So imagine that this is Chuck's smartphone or his iPad or maybe his laptop or frankly any smart device that he has with him in the field. You're looking at the new COBRA Mobile Enterprise and that it uses email to transfer job information from the office to the field worker. And then the field worker just, when he finishes filling it out, he sends it right back to the office. And since everyone knows how to use email, it's very easy to use. Now you can see the inbox on the left showing Chuck's jobs. I simply touch one of them to access all the job details. So I'll just touch it. And there it is, and it's coming right up. And now I just sent this out just a little bit ago. And what Chuck can do when he gets one of these, he can touch any of these drop downs. Maybe I want to look at the job notes about the job I'm doing. It says fixtures and switches are causing problems. Here's some phone numbers I can call if I need to get a hold of the contact, which is Bob Lindy. I've got his address here. I can even get directions if I need it. And then I've also got some history on the account. It looks like back in 2013, we installed some ballast with some 4 whips and so forth. So I've got a nice little bit of notes about this upcoming job. There's my tech time I can enter. Now I've done a little bit of, before I enter the actual hours, I can fill out a little bit more information. And what's so beautiful about this new technology, I don't have to handwrite anymore. And that's so much easier. Like, let's say I did the work out here and I want to just put my notes on board. I can just touch the tech notes area, hit the microphone, and let me get rid of that. Replaced open splices and basing for ceiling lights. Okay, touch the mic again. Here we go. Replaced open splices in basement for ceiling lights, period. Checked out foyer light switches, period. Checked out dining room light switches, period. Checked out living room receptacles and switches, period. Fixed all connections, period. Tightened all connections in main electrical panel, period. Job completed, period. Talk about easy. No more chicken scratch from the guys. Writing on paper, right? Okay. Okay, we'll just, we'll touch one more thing. I've got the material list right here. I just touched the drop down. Now I've been adding a few materials to this job. And you can see right here, I've got my little price book of all the common materials that I use for this kind of job. Pretty cool. And again, the search is so nice. You know, I can look through any of these and just touch it like a device, and then I can see everything I want that way. Or I can just search and you know, say anything. Handy. Right, when I said that word, it found the category, and any word will bring up any multiple categories. Well, it's just under wire, and I need a handy strap. So I'll just do that. There it is. And then I need 10 of them. So I'll just put the 10 in and I'm done. We'll do one more for fun. NM. And it found devices. And I need this dimmer switch. I'll just do one of those. Okay. And we'll do one of those. Okay. Very good. So I've got some materials on board now. And I've done a couple of other little things with this. I can collapse the material list if I want to. I can look at the selected materials that I've already got on board. I can do so many more things with this. It's just fun. There's my tech notes. Well, let's add some labor now that we talked about. So we're going to add a new entry. Do Chuck Cameron here. And let's just say I was out there today at this job site for 7.5 hours. And there we go. And it's done. I can put as much time in on here. I can select different workers if I need to. I can just, you know, there's so many options with this labor. You can do start in, stop, all, you know, all kinds of GPS, everything you want to do. We'll keep this very simple. Okay, so I've got the labor on board now. I've got my materials, maybe a checkbox. I want to use that too. Maybe the job's completed, touch that. And I'm going to tell the office, send out an invoice. You can collect on site too if you want to. And you can also take photos. A lot of people like that. I took a photo earlier. It's a picture, and you can put a little information like this was a recent visit to Italy, and you know, take as many pictures as you want with this thing. So it's fast and easy. I just touch submit, and boom, I'm done with the job. All the information that I've recorded is going to be in your office, and we'll take a look at that real briefly to check out actual material and labor costs. Okay, so it's on its way back. So now at this point, we'll go into COBRA, and all you do is go to your job center screen, and we'll take a look at the import field sheets. And here they are. Now I did one a little earlier. This one will be coming in a minute, but you can see the same thing that I did here. And I've got Chuck Cameron, the first line down below here is L for labor, and I got Chuck with his 7.5 hours. Maybe I want to post that right to payroll first. I can do that if I want to. Just bring up the pay run ID that I've got set up in the COBRA payroll. There it is. And I'll click post. And now those hours are right into the payroll. Simple. And then the last thing I can do, if I want to, is post all of this to the job as well. I'll just click post to job, and everything I've done is now on the job itself. So I bring up the job now. There's my costs on material, there's the labor, everything. If I look at the detail, there's Chuck Cameron, there's his true cost that we've been talking about all morning on this 66.61. There's his price, there's his charge. Very simple. I can look at the profit preview, make sure we're making all the profit that we want to per item. It's all done for me. I want to look at the job notes. There's the job notes that I talked about. Those can go right on the invoice. If I want, I can take a look at my documents on file. And there's the pictures that I took. If I want to bring up the pictures, I can click those on as well. So everything's done properly. We've saved ourselves so much time, made life a little bit easier in the office, and we've tackled what are called the true costs of the job. There's that 13% overhead we talked about earlier, all automated for us. Okay, so if you guys got any questions on any of this, you know, you've got our email address, but let me give it to you. Let me give you mine. It's jim@cobra-usa.com. And email me if you'd like to talk further about any of this. Be happy to work with you. You're good, loyal customers of ours, and we want you to succeed. And I think I'm going to wrap things up right now. So give us a call or email me, and we can get online together and work together on any of this information. And keep in mind, if you want we are recording this as well, and we can get you the recording if you need it. All right. I think we're going to conclude this today. Looks like we kind of wrapped up and got everything done. So have a great day, guys, and I look forward to working with you. Thanks so much.